All right, man, I think I finally got it figured out. I'm going to throw the ball through the kitchen window, off the doghouse, rocketing up and off the bird feeder, all the way through the target.
I don't know, man. That's a really tough angle. I think you got to ditch the bird feeder.
How long did that take you?
Couple hours.
You know you could have just gone off the porch column.
That's a good-looking plate of food.
The Eckridge $1 Million Challenge is back. Enter at EckridgeFootball.com for your chance to win.
What do you think? Seriously, dude?
Welcome in to PFF TV. It's your college football season preview brought to you by Eckridge, the official smoked sausage of the college football playoff. And that's where we're going to start, Mike. All about the road to the college football playoff. Who will be standing at the ends, the final four. And of course, I'm going to defer to the PFF preseason top 25, which has Alabama at number 1, Georgia at number 2, Clemson number 3, Wisconsin at number 4. That's just who we're saying are the best teams in the nation right now. What are your thoughts on that top 4?
Yeah, I don't think anyone out there is going to argue against Alabama going back to the college football playoff. Every single year it seems like they're there. This year, though, the quarterback position is what I'm looking at. They reload defensively every single year. They're going to be good there. But the quarterback position, Jalen Hurts, the incumbent obviously, but Tua Tagovailoa came in the national championship game as a true freshman, threw the game-winning touchdown pass, had a 72.3 overall grade. Now, that doesn't sound great, but it came against one of the nation's best pass defenses in Georgia. He looks like the favorite to win that job there, even though they haven't really announced. If he is a dynamic playmaker, I don't really see how teams are going to be beating Bama again.
Yeah, because they're still highly graded all across the rest of the roster, still reloading with great talent. But Tua brings just a dynamic passing ability where they have all these playmakers to get the ball to, right? And I love Jalen Hurts. I really do love what he does for that Alabama offense. But Tua can take him to the next level. What about Georgia, Clemson as we look at 2 and 3? Georgia, they've lost some playmakers too, but go check out our Georgia season preview because it's all about depth over there. They've got a ton of talent coming back there as well.
Yeah, you look at Georgia, you look at these next 3 teams on the list with Georgia, Clemson, and Wisconsin. All of them have an elite unit somewhere on that roster that's probably going to carry them pretty far this season. With Georgia, it's that secondary led by DeAndre Baker, one of the best cornerbacks in the nation. For Clemson, it's the defensive line, Clelin Ferrell, Austin Bryant, Dexter Lawrence, Christian Wilkins, 4 deep in guys who might go in the first round next year on the defensive line. And for Wisconsin, they bring back a starting 5 along that offensive line that all could grade out in the top 10 of their respective positions, all could go in the first 3 rounds. Those units are going to carry those teams, and they have the sort of horsepower to keep up with a team like Alabama.
Wisconsin also might have the best linebackers in the country. Yes. When we're putting together our position units, Wisconsin showing up in a couple different areas. I'm real interested in teams like Oklahoma, Ohio State. They come in at 5 and 6 for us, and they certainly have a great chance to get to the playoff. But you've got the Urban Meyer questions at Ohio State, but both teams have quarterback questions. You have Kyler Murray taking over at Oklahoma. You have Dwayne Haskins, who's getting great reports at Ohio State. I think he could be a very good player, but still, there's an unknown factor there.
Yeah, the interesting thing is, well, we know Baker Mayfield, one of the best college quarterbacks of all time, but the thing is, J.T. Barrett, there's room for upgrade there for Ohio State, which is a scary thing because they always have one of the best defenses in the country. They've seemingly churned out first-round draft picks at will in the Urban Meyer area, and once again have a defensive line that's going to be, if not is, right up there with Clemson as one of the best defensive lines in college football. So both these teams could make some noise and could end up there when it's all said and done.
Let's discuss a couple teams maybe outside of our top few ranked teams, outside of the top 10. Who could make some noise and maybe crash the party for the CFB playoff?
The one team I'm looking at that hasn't gotten a ton of preseason hype, is still ranked in the teens, but the quarterback position at Michigan looks like actually has some quality, some talent there for the first time in a long time, with Shea Patterson transferring in from Mississippi and being able to play right away. Jim Harbaugh has sort of lost his luster as the quarterback whisperer, but he worked some magic at Stanford, worked magic with Colin Kaepernick in the NFL. There's only so much you can do when you don't have talent, though. And now he seemingly has it with Patterson. If he can take him to the next level after he graded out 76.9 a season ago, I think they could be there at the end of the year.
And Patterson has some natural playmaking ability. I'm going to keep an eye on Stanford, too. Probably the best quarterback they've had there in a while, KJ Costello, Heisman candidate in Bryce Love. Earlier today, we talked to the PFF analytics guys. It's George Shahuri and Eric Eager. They're going to give you a breakdown on what goes in to these PFF top 25 rankings.
The great thing about preseason college rankings, we know they're going to change, but it's still fun to take a look at where they lay now and who might move rather soon. Washington and Auburn, they play each other in week 1, so we know that's going to be a shakeup. We comprise our rankings based on every single play of every single game. We grade every single player, and so these are incredibly comprehensive and give us a great look at where they stand now. A team that we have a lot higher than the rest of the nation is USC. Why is that?
USC is good in the right places, right? So we know that passing is the most important thing in football. USC stops the pass very well. They got the personnel there. They support their quarterback in the passing game. And, you know, even though they're moving on from Sam Darnold, we don't think that downgrade is that substantial. The great thing about coverage is that it's probably undervalued. Everyone overvalues stopping the run, but really stopping the pass is what you need to do. And on the flip side, look, JT Daniels is head and shoulders above the rest of the quarterbacks coming in, and he's got a great supporting cast. He might have upgraded at running back, actually, in terms of being able to catch the ball. Yep. And then Tyler Vaughns and Michael Pittman are tremendous. So he's got the ability to step in. He could actually cut down on some of those turnover-worthy plays where Sam Darnold actually led the Pac-12 last season in most turnover-worthy plays. So I think this is a team we could see shooting up. They don't play Washington this season, so moving up is where I see USC. Let's look at Ohio State real quick because we are a peg lower on them than the rest of the nation. Yeah, so they're 5th in the AP poll. We have them at 6th because of a change at quarterback and uncertainty at head coach, and that's certainly something that we've seen, in our model is not a trivial deal.
That's why they play the games, right? Let's go ahead and take a look at the top 5 now. No surprise at the top. Does Alabama have a weakness?
I mean, I only think that their weakness is that they have some players leaving for the NFL every year, but they seem to reload all the time. Their difference between 1 and 2, between them and Georgia, is probably the same as Georgia and Ohio State. So just because it's 1-2 there doesn't mean we don't think there's a significant gap.
I agree, right? I think there's a huge gap between Alabama and 2 and 3, so likely looking to see Alabama stay in the college football playoff. Let's move down the list a little bit. We've got Georgia and Clemson, both very strong. Wisconsin is an interesting team here. What makes Wisconsin so good?
Yeah, I think that this is where PFF grades come into play. We like Alex Hornibrook more than I think that the public does. And then he, comes in with an offensive line that's brilliant, a really good defense, and a running game that I think is one of the nation's best.
I'll tell you why I like Wisconsin and why I think our ranking likes them too. Again, their ability to cover the pass is very strong, and I think that's a reason why. Look, Alex Hornibrook, probably not the greatest quarterback in this group of top 10s, but he can ride that defense pretty far. Oklahoma, another team where they have a returning coach, so even though they're changing quarterback, that scheme will stay.
That's right.
It'll be exciting to see where these teams move, track this week by week, and we'll bring you the rankings every time.
Always love listening to George and Eric because for the first time they're putting some context behind our grades and automating that nice PFF top 25 every single week. Now I want to transition to some players because that's what we do here at PFF. We evaluate players just as much as we evaluate teams. We've already put out our PFF top 50 heading into the season, the best players regardless of position. Give me some names to watch this year that came out of that top 50.
Well, let's give you one name to watch, and it's the guy who's at number 1. Joey Bosa's brother, Nick Bosa, almost a carbon copy. If you watched them back-to-back, interspersed each other's playlists, I don't think you could differentiate between the two at the college level. That's how good Nick Bosa is. All I want to see is him do it on more snaps, but his win rate as a pass rusher last year was the best in college football, and that's as a true sophomore.
And we should see even more of him this year, right?
Yes.
From just a pure snap total, maybe a couple hundred more snaps, even more production behind it. I think people might be surprised to see that Ed Oliver wasn't our number 1 player. He was only number 2, which is okay. We love Ed Oliver because he's probably the best run stopper in the entire country, the 3rd best run stopping grade we've ever given to an interior defensive lineman last year at 94.1. And Mike, he just moves like a linebacker or a corner sometimes. The way he moves at 280 pounds, he's an incredible athlete.
Sometimes I'd even like to see him play linebacker there because they really pigeonhole him kind of as a nose tackle, and why he's fantastic at that. He's so diverse in his skill set and what he can do. I think they could use him in a lot of different roles. They don't really, but I'd love to see him do that. I'd love to see him get some snaps on offense this year. Maybe he does that to help out his Heisman contention.
Yeah, we'll be keeping an eye on Ed as a potential defensive Heisman candidate. What else? Who else you got, Mike? Who are you watching this season? Just pure players that you love to watch.
I love watching the trenches. You know I love watching the trenches, and I'm going to talk about a guy on the offensive line, Dalton Reisner for Kansas State. Hasn't gotten a lot of hype, hasn't gotten a lot of national attention. I've seen places where they don't even have him ranked as a prospect. But for me, he's a top 10 sort of player in college football. Only gave up 6 pressures a season ago, as clean as it gets there on the offense line. He's just fun to watch now.
Yeah, and he landed at number 10 on our list. And I want to go to the small school guys. We've talked a lot about the trenches already, but staying with the edge rushers, it's Sutton Smith out of Northern Illinois. Maction is usually known for the pass game and 60 points a game, but Sutton Smith, his season, what he did last year, rushing off the edge and setting the edge. He's good against the run as well at only 230 pounds. Absolutely incredible, a player to watch, and he dominated against Power 5 competition last year as well. He has a couple opportunities to do the same this season.
Yeah, and I'm going to go to running back, though, because one guy I want to see is Jonathan Taylor, and not just because he's that good, but because he's going to be running behind the by far best offensive line we've seen in our grading system. He had the most yards after contact in the entire nation a season ago. He is a threat, I will say, to get towards Barry Sanders' rushing. I'm not going to say he's going to break it, but he's got a threat to get there.
Just because the O-line combined with his over 1,300 yards after contact, I love the fact that we do a pretty good job of separating what the running back does from the offensive line when you put those two together. That's dynamic. You also have Bryce Love from Stanford, maybe the best big play threat in the entire country. I'm going to be watching SEC corners Greedy Williams from LSU and DeAndre Baker from Georgia. I think they'll be battling out for the top cornerback spot. I want to throw it to Sam Monson, though, because he's going to give us the full breakdown on a running back that could be the very best runner in the entire country.
Let me tell you about why Iowa State's David Morgan may be the most underrated player in the entire country at running back. The thing we're going to look at here, broken tackles. There is nobody in the nation that's able to avoid tackles, break them with such consistent regularity as David Montgomery is. One of the reasons he's going completely under the radar on the national scale is because his numbers are relatively pedestrian, just 4.4 yards per carry in 2017. But you have to look at the blocking that was in front of him. The Iowa State offensive line was not good. He was consistently getting met at or behind the line of scrimmage. He averaged 3.4 of those yards after contact. So essentially, they were buying him a yard every single play, and everything on top of that was David Montgomery breaking tackles, getting everything, all that yardage himself. Other running backs, far greater statistics, 7, 8 yards per carry, but the offensive line is buying them giant holes every single play. Not so for Montgomery. His ability to break tackles, really it's unmatched. If you look at the distance between him and the next guy, that's just as a runner. When we get to overall running and receiving, 109 broken tackles last season. That's the highest figure we've ever seen in college. It's the highest figure we've ever seen even in the NFL. Nobody has managed to post 109 broken tackles over the course of the season. And when you throw on the tape, you see it every single down. He's able to break tackles with incredible regularity. He's got this quick ability to make subtle moves just before the contact point that prevents defenders getting a clean shot on him when they have him lined up. And that is vital because when they don't get a clean shot, they get half a shoulder on Montgomery, they get a little piece of him, and he's able to work his way out of that tackle, keep on trucking. He's only 5'11", 216 pounds. It's kind of ideal body type for a running back, and that's part of what makes him so great. And when you dive into one of PFF's advanced statistics, the elusive rating, this is what sums up David Montgomery. This statistic was created essentially to try and distill what a running back does from the job the offensive line or the run blocking does to get him yardage. So we look at broken tackles, we look at yards after contact per carry, we roll all this stuff together and we try and isolate the job the running back is doing from his blocking. When you do that last season, Again, David Montgomery was amongst the best in the nation. The only person ahead of him, Rashad Penny from San Diego State, who had a monster rushing season and went in the first round of the NFL draft to the Seattle Seahawks. So forget about the overall numbers. Forget about the yards per carry figure. Watch David Montgomery carry the ball. Watch him make people miss. And you will understand why David Montgomery is arguably the best running back in the nation, most certainly one of the most underrated players in all of college football.
Absolutely love what David Montgomery can do, especially if that offensive line takes the next step this year. Let's turn to quarterbacks now. We finally get to the signal callers. It's going to be a different year. We're talking last season, it was all about the quarterbacks. The year of the QB, Baker Mayfield, Sam Darnold, Josh Rosen, all of these guys, Lamar Jackson, from a college standpoint, from a draft standpoint. That was the story in college football. But this year, there's really no face of college football. There's no quarterback that you say, that's the guy. It's really wide open at the top. Do you have a guy, Mike? Who's your quarterback this year?
I'm not sure I have a guy, but there are two quarterbacks who are just more fun to watch, in my opinion, than any other quarterback in college football. One is obvious. Khalil Tate, watching him run the football is more fun than watching probably anyone else with the ball in their hands. It's like Lamar Jackson was a season ago, just a threat to take it to the house. His game against Colorado last year, where he had over 300 yards rushing, was probably the most fun I've ever had watching a guy play football. He
over
was just
20 yards per carry, forced 9 missed tackles,
yeah.
Incredible.
Just out in space, untouchable, was fantastic to watch. He is as dynamic as he gets the quarterback position. He'll just be fun on a game-to-game basis. Needs to improve as a passer, but what he can do with his legs is special. And the other one is Mackenzie Milton, the quarterback for UCF. Isn't even 6 foot tall, but he's still got a rocket for an arm. Makes some throws down the field that make you just go, wow. What some of his throws in the bowl game against Auburn, just fearless, tight windows down the field again and again. He's going to take chances with the football. He'll put it in harm's way, but he's a lot of fun to watch.
Oh, I love Milton. I love what he brings. We got more on Milton coming up soon. We have more on another guy, too, Will Grier from West Virginia. He's one of the guys I'm watching. I just love how quickly he took to that West Virginia scheme. He was aggressive, too, chucking the ball down the field. His ability to stretch the field in that offense, throw accurately at the intermediate level, I think that makes him a special player, potential Heisman candidate. And then just from a pure skill set standpoint, Justin Herbert from Oregon, I mean, 6'6", cannon for an arm. I don't think he has the best touch in the world, but he can zip that ball into tight windows. And when he was healthy last year, we saw the difference when he was healthy and when he wasn't. The way Oregon's offense completely changed. Plus, he can move. He's athletic at 6'6". Like I'm saying, I don't know who the best quarterback is in the country. This is wide open among all of these guys we're discussing.
Yeah, I think there's even a handful of guys who could join into that category. Trace McSorley for Penn State graded out well for a season ago. Tua Tagovailoa coming the freshman for
just
Alabama.
Call him Tua. He's just Tua.
What he did in the national championship game, very encouraging, and he can run. He can move with his legs as well. So a lot of names that could end up by the end of the season being the guy at the top.
I think one of the sleepers, too, that people might be talking about really soon, Dwayne Haskins from Ohio State, when he does get that opportunity. Liked what I saw from him in the spring game. We have our QB guru, Zach Robinson, though. I love watching him dissect quarterback play. He's a huge Mackenzie Milton fan. He likes Will Grier. He likes these short guys that have the arm talent to throw the ball down the field. Let's see what Zach sees in Milton and Grier in their games in college.
So we're going to discuss Mackenzie Milton and Will Grier and some of their strengths to their game. A lot of the time, stylistically, both these guys look relatively the same. We can see just deep passing yards from 2017. Mackenzie Milton, first in the nation, 1,812 yards. And then Will Grier was fourth in the nation at 1,506 yards. So both guys are making explosive plays in the passing game. Kind of can do it a little bit different ways. Mackenzie Milton has great touch to the perimeter of the field, where Will Grier a season ago, in terms of just deep ball posts and go routes, was our #1 graded guy. So both guys can push the ball vertically down the field. Now let's just take a look at what each guy brings kind of on their own here. And Will Grier, we mentioned the big time throws, throwing down the field 20+, but he's also great at buying time. He had 11 big time throws, with time to throw of over 3 seconds or longer. So these are extended plays, maybe off of play action, as well as just him buying himself time in the pocket. He's a very poised guy, can hang in there and find guys down the field. We see it time and time again in the Big 12, especially. You see 3-man rushes. He's great at buying time and just always looking for a big throw down the field. So that's just something that he does really, really well. As you can see, he was second in the nation on those longer developing plays on big-time throws last year. Next thing with Will Grier that you love is the red zone. Last year, our top-graded red zone guy in the country, whether he's throwing up the seams or fade balls, touch balls to the outside, Will Grier has all the throws in the red zone. He was a very sound decision maker last year. Best touchdown interception ratio from a season ago. So just something else that Will Grier brings to the table from a consistency basis inside the red zone. We look at the other end, McKenzie Milton. Overall big-time throws, had the most in the country, 37 big-time throws. That's our highest graded throws. That's our downfield throws, as well as some of the tight window, intermediate level, and tight window red zone. We saw McKenzie Milton time and time again. You look at the conference championship game last season, even the second half of the Auburn game, big-time throws all over the field, whether he's, like we said earlier, touch balls to the outside. When teams play cover one, they always got to be aware of his ability to push the ball to the perimeter and over the top of the defense. He does it better than anybody in the country. And then finally, the next thing when you look at McKenzie Milton is his play on the move, whether it was design rollouts or just scramble plays where he's making a play and extending the play outside the pocket. He had our second best, or last season he was in the top 5, and he's second amongst our returning quarterbacks for 2018 in terms of just making big plays on the move. We saw it time and time again. The Auburn game down inside the red zone, finds a guy in the back of the end zone, as well as conference championship game too. So McKenzie Milton, when he's playing outside on the move, whether it's designed or on his own scrambles, he's the best in the country at it. And that just brings together, a couple things that Will Grier and McKenzie Milton bring to the table. Both guys, some of our best quarterbacks that we're going to see this season, and we're definitely looking for big things from them.
You can't discuss Heisman Trophy without discussing the QBs, but Mike, we've already talked about this year being wide open at the top among quarterbacks. Is this a year where another position can swoop in for the Heisman?
I think this definitely is, and I think a running back at the end of the day will come home with the Heisman Trophy. Which one, I'm not so sure yet, but there are two names at the top that have the perfect mix of talent, offensive lines in front of them, and then good teams that are going to be in the mix at the end of the season that Heisman Trophy voters will love. One's Bryce Love, over 2,000 yards a season ago, 35 carries of 15 yards or more. Those went for 1,405 yards. Both of those numbers are the most in the entire country. He's sure to repeat or get close to those stats this season. And then Jonathan Taylor from Wisconsin led the nation in yards after contact, running behind probably the best offensive line we've seen in our 4 years of college grading this upcoming year. Both those guys look like poised to, all they just need is the touches and the touchdowns, and they'll be in that mix.
I like what you said, though, because it's about the situation, right? Mm-hmm. Bryce Love does have a nice offensive line, and he has that next level speed. When you get him to the second level, he turns 15-yard gains into 50-yard touchdowns. That's what he was doing last year before he got hurt. And like you mentioned, Jonathan Taylor behind the best offensive line in college football. He should have put up some huge numbers. We have J.K. Dobbins out of Ohio State. He was just a true freshman last year. He looked great.
Yes.
Again, if they stay in the mix, we'll see how much the Urban Meyer thing potentially affects that roster, but they're going to be in the mix as well. Let's discuss some of those quarterbacks, though, because you talked about how dynamic Khalil Tate is. I mean, is he a guy? We talked about 2,000 yards rushing for Bryce Love. Could he rush for 2,000 at the quarterback position?
I think he is a threat to, and because of how dynamic he is about as fast a player as I've seen in the open field in college football. I just worry about Arizona having the record to justify putting him in the Heisman race. I will say, though, if a quarterback does win, I think it's a guy who could come out of nowhere, because the ones we've seen in recent years, when it was Jameis Winston, Lamar Jackson, they just seemingly came out of nowhere. The season before, they were nothing. The next year, they were there. Dwayne Haskins of Ohio State, we know nothing about him at this point, has not been on the field, but the reports coming out of Ohio State are that he could be a guy in that mix.
Yeah, so just like him and J.K. Dobbins, if Ohio State is sitting there undefeated or with one loss down the stretch, that's where the Heisman voters tend to skew. And if Khalil Tate, by the way, is going to maybe be in the mix despite not having the best record. I think historically, when you look at when Lamar Jackson won it, when Tim Tebow won it, it wasn't necessarily with the best record.
Yeah.
It was by breaking the statistical barriers, especially when it came to rushing. So Khalil Tate does have that opportunity. What about Mackenzie Milton from UCF? I mean, he went undefeated last year. That's your guy. We've talked about him quite a bit on this show. What if they're going undefeated again?
UCF does have a very good PR department, with the national championship that they're claiming from a season ago. If they're in the mix again, undefeated again towards the end of the season, I wouldn't be surprised if he's in the mix.
My boy Will Greer, he'll be in the mix as well. Now, because we're PFF, and if we were doing this Heisman on our own, completely separate from the voters, we're all about the best players, regardless of position, man. So we would focus on the defense as well, and we just put out the PFF Top 50 that had Nick Bosa at number 1, Ed Oliver at number 2. Could we see a defensive player this year be in the mix for the Heisman?
Well, we've already seen the Ed Oliver Heisman campaign in full effect. They've been sending us, bobbleheads of Ed Oliver, trying to get us
we need to get that on here
to sway our opinion on him. But I will say, I just don't think. I think it's going to be a while before a defender actually wins the Heisman. You're going to have to put up 20-plus sacks, pick off 15 or so passes. You're going to have to do something, again, like you said, break the statistical mold of what's possible to actually get a Heisman if you're a defender.
Yeah, I was pushing for Myles Garrett a couple years ago before he slowed down with an ankle injury. I think we have Ed coming in right here. Here he is. Here's our guy. So look, he's getting my vote, man. He's getting my vote. He sent us the bobblehead, the bobble horse, him and Oreo. So if any defensive player is going to do it, it's definitely Ed Oliver. Let's make a pick, though, Mike. You made very convincing cases for those running backs. Who would you go with for Heisman?
I think it's Jonathan Taylor. Just from what he's running behind, offensive line-wise, that go 5 across of just players who are in the top 10 at their position, and then the fact that the schedule that Wisconsin is facing this year, not a lot of world beaters they're going against. He might have 5 or 6 games where he doesn't even take a snap in the fourth quarter because they'll be ahead by so much. I think he's my pick.
I'm going to go with Bryce Love of Stanford. He was on his way to doing that last year, and when he stays healthy, another 2,000-yard season and all those big plays. That'll wrap it up for the College Football Preview Show, brought to you by Eckridge, the official smoked sausage of the College Football Playoff. Don't forget to pick up Eckridge smoked sausage at your local grocery store for this weekend's tailgate or home gate party. And make sure to visit EckridgeFootball.com for great game day recipes and to enter the season-long $1 Million Challenge.